They thought he was just another quiet old man on a lonely road. They thought his wife was just another easy target. They thought nobody would question them. They were wrong. Because the man they stopped that afternoon was about to pull them into a fight they never saw coming. Not a shouting match, not a roadside argument, but a battle inside a federal courtroom that would expose everything they had been hiding for years, and it all began with a single stop on a road that most people never paid attention to. Tom Reyes kept both hands steady at the top of the steering wheel. 10 and 2. A habit he never abandoned even after retiring. Even after watching his father warn him for decades that rules were the only shield men like him ever had. The blue lights behind their car flashed hard against the tall pecan trees lining Harper Road, a quiet stretch outside of Brookhaven, Mississippi. A place Tom and his wife Leela had driven home on for nearly 20 years. Yet that day, it felt different. It felt colder. It felt like a storm hiding behind polite instructions. Lila leaned slightly forward, her voice soft enough to be calm, but firm enough to carry worry. "Why did they pull us over?" she asked. Tom kept his eyes on the mirror. "Said the brake light was out," he answered. Except it wasn't, and they both knew it. Two deputies stepped out of their cruiser. One walked with the swagger of a man who liked the sound of his heels hitting pavement. The other moved with quick steps like he was trying too hard to look confident. The taller one stopped at Tom's window. Late 30s. Short blonde hair. Sunglasses reflecting the sky like a shield. "License and registration," he demanded. "Step out of the car, too." Tom blinked once. "Stepping out already? Is there a reason?" he asked calmly. The deputy chewed on a toothpick. "You questioning a lawful order?" Tom's hands tightened around the wheel, but only for a second. No anger. No fear. Just a quiet, steady presence. The kind of presence that irritated men who expected panic. The shorter deputy came to Lila's side. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he said. "They have been right here since you walked up," Lila replied without raising her voice. Moments later, Tom was outside the car. Hands on the hood, being searched with roughness that had nothing to do with safety. The tall deputy's name tag read Bolton. "The shorter ones," said Miller. Bolton circled Tom like he was evaluating a threat that didn't exist. "You traveling through for what?" he asked. "Visiting our daughter," Tom replied. "Down in Baton Rouge." Bolton smirked. "Long drive carrying anything you shouldn't beat 'em," turned his head slightly. "Sir, I'm a retired architect, and I know my rights. You need probable cause to search our car." That sentence changed the air. Bolton's shoulders stiffened. His jaw flexed. His voice thinned. "Probable cause? So you think you're smarter than Meadham?" met his eyes. "I didn't say that. I said I know the law." Bolton laughed in a low, irritated way. He muttered something Tom didn't fully catch. Something about old men who talk too much. Meanwhile, Miller ordered Leela out of the car. She stepped out with grace that made Miller's tone look even uglier. They searched. Everything. Bags, backpacks, trunk, glove compartment. All of it. Nothing appeared. 10 minutes later, Bolton slapped a ticket into Tom's hand. Broken brake light. Tom looked at it once. "We'll handle it." The deputies walked back to their cruiser, laughing under their breath, like to schoolyard bullies who thought they had won a game. Tom slid into the driver's seat. Lila didn't speak for several minutes. Her silence said everything. "They expected us to be scared," she finally said. "Not angry?" Scared. Tom nodded. "They don't know who we wrote their names?" she asked. "Every detail," Tom said. "Right here." He tapped the small leather notebook tucked in his jacket. "Good," Lila whispered. "Then let's show them." Tom turned onto the old highway leading home. His hands tightened, not from fear, but from something sharper. Resolve. The kind that does not fade overnight because Bolton and Miller had stopped the wrong man. They just didn't know it yet. At the county station, Abbott Bolton kicked his boots onto a metal desk and bit into a stale burrito like nothing had happened. "Some people just freeze up," he said to Miller. "Man acted like he wanted to give me a lecture or something." Miller snorted. "Yeah, talking like he had a degree in something, driving that beat-up sedan. Give me a break." Neither of them knew. Tom didn't need a phone to record anything. He had everything he needed in that notebook. Dates, times, descriptions, exact quotes. A habit he had built over 40 years while working on major courthouse construction projects. The same habit that helped him testify in legal hearings and expose fraudulent contractors back in Magnolia Bend. Tom sat in his small home office, flipping through that notebook while Leela stood near the window. "You think you're smarter than me," she repeated quietly. "He actually said that. That was the second time," Tom replied. "First was when he tried to justify the search," Miller said. "I looked nervous," Leela added. "Apparently that's a reason." Now Tom closed the notebook slowly. "It isn't, and they know I've picked up the landline." Dialed a number he had not used in 5 years. On the third ring, a woman answered. "Nora, it's Tom Reyes." Pause. "Then a warm well look at you. Didn't expect to hear from you." "Not a great day," Tom replied. "Leela and I were pulled over, no reason, full search," aggressive tone. Nora's voice dropped. "Tell me you wrote down their names." Bolton and Miller. Silence followed. Then Nora said, "I've heard of them. Internal Affairs tried to investigate last year." The sheriff shut it down. Tom's eyes met Lila's. "What did they do?" he asked. "Give me time," Nora answered. "I'll dig." "Thank you. We will need it." Tom hung up. He stared at the old case files stacked in the corner of the room. Lila walked over to a cabinet she hadn't opened since retiring from the bench. She retrieved a thin wooden case. Inside was her old judge's nameplate. She set it on the desk gently. "If we do this, we do it right," she said. "Fax records everything clean, no anger." Tom smiled faintly. "Wouldn't have it any other way." But while they prepared, Bolton and Miller went on with their day, laughing, relaxed, unaware that a case file with their names was already being built against them. A file that would soon pull them into a courtroom they could not talk their way out of. A room where the truth would not bend. A room where the quiet man they mocked would reveal exactly who he was. Tom and Leela worked late into the night at their dining table. Papers were scattered across the wood surface. Old case files, notes, legal articles Lila had stored away, never thought she would touch again. The air in their home felt heavy, but focused. Not angry. Not chaotic. Just two people preparing to do what they had spent a lifetime learning how to do. 3 hours south. Nora stepped out of a dusty records room inside the State Office of Professional Standards. She held a thin stack of papers and frowned at every page. These reports were not vague. They were not gentle. They were direct accusations. Yet each one had been dismissed without explanation. She sat in her car and dialed Tom again. "You were right to call me," she said. "Bolton was suspended once for excessive force at a checkpoint in 2019. Miller received an official warning for discriminatory remarks during a stop the following year. Both complaints vanished." After the sheriff intervened, Tom took a slow breath. "Send everything you can. We will use it the next morning." Bolton and Miller stepped outside the sheriff's office. Miller lit a cigarette with a shaky hand. He didn't want to admit was shaking. "You think that guy's going to file a complaint?" Miller asked. Bolton laughed, but it sounded thinner than before. "Let him. Nobody listens to old retirees who think they know the law." Miller didn't respond. Something in Tom's calmness the day before kept replaying in his mind. Not submissive. Not defiant. Just steady. The kind of steady that comes from someone who knows exactly how to fight without raising his voice. Back in Magnolia Bend, Lila and Tom sat across from each other. Their legal war room had grown. Folders were stacked in neat piles. Tabs marked with colored stickers. A timeline of the entire encounter written in Leela's elegant handwriting. Tom placed a fresh sheet of paper on the table. "I filed a federal complaint under Title 42, Section 1983. Violation of our 4th and 14th Amendment rights. We will push for civil damages and challenge the department's search." The procedures. Leela adjusted her glasses and scanned the document. "You cited Thompson v. Louisiana. Good and Harris v. the state, of course," Tom replied. "But we're not stopping there. We're adding their history, Nora's evidence. Everything's suppressed by the sheriff's office hour, moving faster than you ever did before," Leela said. Tom smiled lightly. "I never stopped, just paused." The doorbell rang. Lila opened the door to see Nora standing there in casual clothes, holding a thick folder of internal affairs records. "These are redacted," she said. But not redacted enough to protect them. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing the documents. Bolton's suspension, Miller's warning. A third unreported incident involving a driver who later moved away and never filed an official complaint. A pattern of behavior that could no longer be hidden. "We need to subpoena the dash cam," Leela said. Tom nodded. "I already filed the request this morning, and I flagged the convenience store across the street. Their security camera might have captured our brake lights." "Even if they claim there's malfunctioned," Nora whistled softly. "You're building this from every angle." Tom leaned back and exhaled slowly. "Because this is not just about us. This is about everyone who didn't have the training or the backing to challenge them. People they counted on staying silent that night. The two of them sat outside on their porch. The air was warm. The cicadas hummed in the tall grass. Lila wrapped both hands around her tea mug. "You think they will take this seriously?" she asked. Tom nodded. "Once reporters show up, they will have no choice." Lila's eyes drifted across the yard. "I don't want revenge," she said. "Neither do I," Tom replied. "I want accountability that's Alta counties away." Sheriff Harlan Pike sat alone in his office. He stared at the lawsuit on his desk with a look that mixed anger with dread. He had been in law enforcement for over 20 years. He had seen lawsuits come and go. But this one was different. This wasn't loud complaining. This wasn't someone shouting into their phone. This was a carefully written federal lawsuit by a man who clearly knew exactly what he was doing. Pike picked up the phone. "Get Bolton and Miller in here now." The deputies walked in minutes later. Bolton tried to look unfazed. Miller looked pale. "You two better hire a lawyer," Pike said. "And until you do, you say nothing to anyone. Not a neighbor, not a reporter, not a friend, nothing," Bolton scoffed. "You really think this is going somewhere, Pike? Didn't blink?" "It already has, and by the time the court date arrives, you'll wish you never touched that car." The court date was set faster than expected, and the story spread even faster. On the morning of the hearing, the line outside the courthouse stretched around the block. Some came because they knew Tom from the old courthouse projects. Some came because they saw the headlines the night before. Some came because they recognized a rare moment when the system was forced to look at itself. Inside the courthouse, the air felt thick with pressure, not chaos. Expectation. Tom adjusted the knot of his tie in the restroom mirror. He had not worn a tie like this in years. A deep navy suit, a crisp white shirt, a burgundy tie with tiny stitching he remembered buying when his daughter graduated from high school. His reflection had aged, but his eyes still held the same sharpness they had during the hearings he used to attend back in 2002, when he helped expose corruption in the county building contracts. Outside, Lila waited near the heavy wooden doors. Her cream blazer looked almost new despite its age. She carried her old judge's briefcase. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," Tom answered. They walked through the courtroom together. Slow, calm, steady, every pair of eyes turned toward them. Across the room, Bolton and Miller sat stiffly at the defense table, their suits wrinkled, their ties loose, no lawyer beside them yet. Just a county representative flipping through a binder that looked too thin for comfort. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The case had begun, and neither side was ready for what would happen next. The courtroom settled into a thick and expectant, quiet as the first motions were discussed. Procedures, technicalities, formalities. That felt slow, but carried the weight of something. Much bigger than 2 citations and a search gone wrong. The county's attorney spoke first. His tone was cool and rehearsed. "A routine traffic stop," he said. "Standard protocol, no misconduct." To him remained silent. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He let the words hang in the air like dust. He knew the truth would come from the evidence, not from talking over someone. When it was Tom's turn, he rose with a calm that made several people lean forward. "My wife and I were pulled over without cause," he began. "Searched without reason, treated without dignity, and dismissed without consequence." He paused. This is not about inconvenience. This is about violation, the kind that takes something from you quietly and expects you not to notice them. Slowly approached the center of the courtroom. He did not shout. He did not perform. He simply talked the way he always had, steady, clear, unshakable. You may say the deputies didn't know who I was, but that is exactly the problem. They believed it would not matter who I was, because they assumed we had no power and no voice. Judge Rowan, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes, listened with a still expression. She tapped her pen lightly, a sign that she was following every detail. Tom returned to his seat. Leela leaned slightly toward him. That was exactly what needed to be said. He nodded. Now we let the record speak to Rose behind them. Nora flipped open her notebook and began reviewing the documents she brought. The security footage from the gas station had been obtained the night before. It showed Tom's car pulling out of the lot calmly with both brake lights glowing bright red. The clerk had even signed a statement confirming the timestamps. As the footage played on the small monitor in the courtroom, you could feel the shift in the room. A subtle leaning forward. A whisper of realization. Both brake lights were perfectly functional. Then Nora presented the dispatch logs. Bolton never reported a broken brake light before initiating the stop. He never radioed in any suspicious behavior. The first mention of any violation appeared after the stop had ended. Lila watched the county lawyer's expression tighten. That timing matters, she thought. It mattered a lot. 3 law professors from Jackson State University sat in the back row taking quiet notes. A pastor from a nearby church sat with several members of his congregation. A handful of young people stood along the wall, having arrived too late to find seats but refusing to leave. Everyone sensed that this wasn't just another case. This was a mirror being held up to something many had seen but few could challenge. By midday, Bolton was called to the stand. He walked slowly. His confidence felt thinner. His steps heavier. His face pale under the courthouse lights. Tom approached him respectfully, but with purpose. "Deputy Bolton, what was the reason for pulling us over on June 8th? Bolton cleared his throat. "Your brake light was broken." "Which brake light? The left one?" Tom nodded. "Please look at the screen." The still frame from the gas station camera glowed behind him. Both brake lights shone bright red. "Can you identify which part of the light appears broken?" Bolton stared. He said nothing. His silence said everything. Tom continued. "Did you report any suspicion to dispatch before the stop note? Did you inform them of any traffic violation before approaching our vehicle?" Noted. "My wife or I behave in a threatening manner." Note. Tom let those answers settle. Then he asked, "Did you call me a man with a smart mouth?" Bolton hesitated. "I don't recall." Tom opened his leather notebook slowly. "At 3:38 you said, and I quote, 'Old men with big talk need to learn when to stay.'" Key to thick tension filled the room. Bolton looked at the judge. "I might have said something like that." Judge Rowan raised an eyebrow but did not speak. Her pen moved faster across her notepad. Bolton stepped down from the stand with stiff movements. He did not look at anyone. He sat beside Miller and stared at the table. Next, Miller took the stand. He tapped his foot rapidly. His hands twitched. He looked like he wanted to run. "Officer Miller," Tom began, "are you aware of an internal complaint filed against you in February of last year?" Miller swallowed. "Yes." "Can you tell the court the nature of that complaint?" Some driver said. "I made a comment I shouldn't have." "What was the comment?" "I don't remember exactly." Tom held up the internal report. "According to this, you said people like you are always hiding something. Do you dispute that?" Miller's voice shrank. No, a wave of murmurs filled the courtroom. The judge tapped her gavel once. "Quiet." Tom continued. "During our stop, did my wife ever refuse any instruction you gave her?" "No." "Did she ever act suspiciously?" "No." "Then, on what basis did you order her out of the car?" She looked nervous. Tom paused. "Officer Miller is looking nervous. Grounds for a full search under department policy." Miller hesitated. "Not usually so. Not in this case." Not that moment marked a turning point. Even the county lawyer shifted in his seat. He could no longer cover the cracks forming across the deputy's testimony. Lila watched it all quietly. She recognized that look in Miller's eyes. The look of someone who had built a wall out of power and fear and finally realized it was made of paper. Tom returned to his seat. Nora whispered, "This is collapsing." Fast Lila nodded. "But there is more on," she was right. Because Tom had brought one more piece of evidence that neither deputy expected. A pattern. A documented history of misconduct. Reports that were dismissed. Warnings ignored. Complaints erased. Tom rose once more. "Your Honor, I intend to show a consistent pattern of behavior across multiple years involving both deputies." Supported by departmental records and statements previously hidden, the county lawyer stood. "Objection." Judge Rowan lifted a hand. Overruled. Every eye in the courtroom turned toward Tom. Reporters leaned forward. Students lifted their phones but lowered them when security gestured to put them away. Church members whispered prayers under their breath. Tom took a breath. He knew this was the part they would remember, because this trial was no longer about one stop. It was about every stop that came before it, and every person who never got to stand where he stood now. Tom placed a thick folder on the evidence table. The sound of it hitting the wood echoed through the courtroom and sent a subtle shiver down the room. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was the weight of truth being set down where everyone could see it. Inside that folder were records that had been ignored, voices that had been brushed aside, complaints stamped with the same phrase, "No action taken." Every single one. Tom opened the folder slowly. "Your Honor, these documents show repeated concerns raised by civilians regarding Deputies Bolton and Miller, not isolated incidents, not misunderstandings. A pattern." Judge Rowan adjusted her glasses. Proceedum held up the first page. In April of last year, a man reported that Deputy Bolton searched his vehicle without cause. He claimed Bolton used language intended to intimidate him into silence. He held up the second page. 3 months later, a woman filed a complaint against Officer Miller. She stated he made a remark implying guilt before even speaking to her. Her report was dismissed without investigation. He lifted the third. This one never made it past the front desk. Driver from Canton claimed he was pulled over, questioned, searched, and warned not to file a complaint because, according to the statement, nobody will believe. Your kind of hush spread across the room. No one moved. No one cleared their throat. Not even the county's attorney dared to interrupt. Tom continued. These are not outdated. These are not exaggerated. These are recent, and each one was closed without proper review when he placed the final sheet down. The county lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, these complaints cannot prove intent. My clients were performing routine duties under stressful conditions. Judge Rowan raised a hand. Said your objection is noted, but this evidence speaks directly to a pattern of behavior. The court will consider it. Bolton shifted in his seat. His jaw clenched. His shoulders tightened. His earlier swagger was gone. He no longer looked like a man in control. Miller leaned forward with both hands over his face. He no longer looked like the deputy who had barked orders the day of the stop. He looked like a man who finally realized how deep the water had become. When the court recessed for the afternoon, the hallway filled instantly with whispers. Students whispered about cross-examination techniques. Church members whispered prayers for strength. Reporters whispered about the possibility of a broader investigation. Tom and Lila stepped outside into the sunlight. It was warm, bright, almost peaceful. But Tom's mind was still inside the courtroom. Nora caught up with them. That went better than expected, she said. But tomorrow we'll decide everything. Lila nodded. They will try to argue procedure, but the truth is already on the table. Tom remained quiet. He knew the next day mattered. Not for pride, not for victory. For the principle at the core of everything he believed in, accountability. Back at their home that evening, they spread out papers again. Reviewing every detail, every timeline, every policy handbook reference. Tom sipped his coffee and looked at the stack of records. When I was young, my father used to tell me, respect the badge, but never fear the person wearing it. Lila looked up. He was a wise man. Tom nodded. But somewhere along the way, some officers forgot that their authority has limits. They started to believe authority meant ownership, and people like us were supposed to stay. Quiet. Lila reached across the table and touched his hand. We are not staying quiet the next morning. The courthouse parking lot overflowed. People stood outside with umbrellas. Some were local. Some drove from an hour away. Others said they came because they had once been stopped on a lonely road too. They came because they did not want to feel alone anymore. Inside, standing room only signs were already posted. The judge entered and everyone rose. Tom felt Leela's presence beside him like a steady anchor. The county lawyer gave a brief closing statement. A traffic stop, a misunderstanding, a lack of ill intent. He kept repeating that phrase. No ill intent, but Leela could see Judge Rowan's expression grow sharper with each repetition. Intent was not the only measure. Impact mattered too. Pattern mattered. Truth mattered. When it was Tom's turn for closing remarks, he stood without haste. He walked to the center of the courtroom, not with the speed of a lawyer looking to win, but with the purpose of a man who had lived the consequences of silence. When I was 12, Tom began. My older brother was stopped walking home from work. He was searched in front of the whole street. He came home shaken, not because he had done anything wrong, but because he had been treated as if his life was already a crime. He paused. The room was silent. Even the hum of the ceiling fan felt muted. Years later, I promised myself, if I ever had the chance to stand for what he went through, I would. Not with anger, not with shouting, with facts. With truth. Leela felt her chest tighten. She had heard that story only once before. Hearing it now in that room in that moment carried a different weight. Tom looked directly at the judge. This case is not about hurt, pride, or misunderstandings. It is about two deputies deciding on a quiet road that my wife and I were unworthy of respect before they even approached our window. He stepped back. The truth has been presented. The rest is in your hands. He returned to his seat. Leela reached for his hand. He gave hers a small squeeze. By then, everyone in the courtroom knew it. Something irreversible had happened. A door had opened, and whatever came next could not be undone. Rowan called for an hour recess to review the evidence. No one moved from their seats. No one dared walk out. Everyone waited because the ruling would decide more than the fate of two deputies. It would decide whether the truth they had all witnessed would hold its ground. And when the judge returned, the entire room leaned forward, ready breath held for the moment that would define everything that followed. Judge Rowan stepped back to the bench with a steady posture. Her expression gave away nothing. Not relief, not anger, not sympathy, only the gravity of a decision she knew would carry far beyond the four walls of that courtroom. Everyone in the room rose as she entered. Everyone sat when she gestured. And then the final silence fell. A silence so sharp, it felt like the entire building was listening. After reviewing all testimony, all recorded evidence, all documented history, and all procedural records I find in favor of the plaintiffs Tom and Lila Reyes, the words did not echo. They landed. They hit the room like a quiet thunderclap. The actions of deputies Bolton and Miller. Judge Rowan continued, constituted a violation of the Fourth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. This court orders that both deputies be suspended without pay pending a full review by Internal Affairs. Furthermore, the Pine Ridge County Sheriff's Office will issue a public statement acknowledging misconduct during the stop. She paused. The courtroom waited. Even the air seemed to hold itself still. In addition, the department is ordered to pay damages in the amount of $140,000. She set her pen down gently. Let this ruling serve as a reminder. Authority does not erase accountability. The gavel struck. Case closed. Bolton stared straight ahead as if the world had gone numb. Miller buried his face in his hands. Sheriff Pike rose from his seat in the back row and walked out quickly, avoiding every pair of eyes that tried to follow him. Tom slowly exhaled. Not a quick breath, not a triumphant sigh, a slow release of weight that had been resting on his chest for days, maybe years. Lila squeezed his hand. Her eyes glistened not from relief, but from the validation of something she had seen her whole life finally spoken out loud by a judge who listened. Reporters rushed forward the moment they stepped into the hallway. Microphones were held out. Questions fired rapidly. Tom lifted a hand. We are not giving statements today, but I will say this. What happened here was not about punishment. It was about truth. And truth deserves a place in every room, especially the ones where decisions are made. That was all he said. And it was enough. That evening, back home in Magnolia Bend, the porch lights glowed softly as Tom and Leela sat together with warm tea. Crickets chirped in the grass. A breeze rustled the leaves. "Do you think anything will change?" Leela asked quietly. Tom took a long sip before answering. "Not everywhere, but somewhere someone saw this. Someone who never thought they had a chance. Someone who will remember today and refuse to stay silent." Leela nodded gently. "That makes it worth it." Tom opened his notebook and tucked the court ruling inside. Next to the ticket, next to the timestamps, next to every detail he had written down the moment the stop began. For Tom, this notebook was not a weapon. It was a reminder that silence protects the wrong people and truth protects the right ones. 2 weeks later, Tom stood inside a bright classroom at River State College of Law. He wasn't behind a podium. He wasn't using notes. He was simply standing with his sleeves rolled up, the same leather notebook in hand. 20 students sat before him, watching, listening, absorbing every word. "The law does not fix everything," Tom said. "But it gives you something stronger than anger. It gives you tools. And tools matter when the world tries to tell you to be quiet." A student raised his hand. "How did you stay calm when they pulled you over?" Tom smiled softly. "Because I understood something important. Anger makes you rush. Clarity makes you win." Another student asked, "Was your wife scared?" Tom shook his head. "Leila has seen more in her courtroom than those deputies could ever throw at her. She wasn't scared. She was disappointed. Disappointed that we still have these moments in a place that promises fairness after class." Students remained to ask questions. Tom answered each one patiently. Not to inspire, but to prepare them, because preparation was how he had survived that day on Harper Road. Meanwhile, in their home office, Leila was drafting the founding documents for something new. A small legal aid initiative to support people in rural communities facing unfair stops. She named it River Justice Collective. Not to change the entire world, but to level one part of it. Nora visited one afternoon with official updates. Bolton and Miller had both hired lawyers. The county had opened an internal investigation. And Sheriff Pike was now under quiet review by the state board. "People are watching," Nora said. "More than you think." Leila closed the folder in front of her. Good let them sunlight streamed across the desk and caught the old judge's nameplate beside her. She had not stood on the bench in years, but the work had returned to her hands all the same. Tom walked out to check the mail later that evening. Among the envelopes was one small letter with no return address. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single handwritten line. "I saw what you did. I'm applying to law school." Tom read it twice. Then he carried it inside and handed it to Leila. She smiled softly after reading. "Told you it mattered." Tom sat beside her on the porch again. The sky glowed a deep orange as the sun dipped behind the trees. "People always say the law is blind," he said. "But maybe it's not. Maybe it just looks away too often until someone makes it look again." Leila took his hand without a word. And together they watched the sky shift into night to people shaped by decades of trials. Losses, victories, and a quiet belief that standing up matters even when the world expects you not to. Because on that quiet road, they had not been powerless and they had not been unheard. And the truth they carried home that day was stronger than any badge, any threat, or any silence. It was a reminder that justice does not arrive loudly. It arrives when someone refuses to stop telling the truth. No matter who tries to silence them, and no matter how long the road may be,